Hi, I'm Paul.
And I'm Tiffany.
To some, we could be called career wizards.
And to others, sometimes we seem like therapists. However, we definitely are not.
But for you, we are the co-hosts of the Career Boosters podcast. Okay, hello and welcome to season 2 of the Career Boosters podcast. I am Paul. That is Tiffany.
I'm Tiffany, and I'm apparently slow on the unmute button.
That's okay. And one thing that you'll notice is if you are watching us on YouTube, this is our first ever video podcast of season 2. We're not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we're going to jump into it. It's perfect for us right now. Today in episode 1, we get to speak with one international student, Chuy, and we get to speak with one domestic student, Zeyana. Both came through orientation last year. Zeyana and Chuy were key contributors is what I'm going to call it to orientation. I'm going to jump into teamwork. I'm going to be a part of this really cool experience. And so we're going to talk a little bit about all of the resources that we had them go through and through at them. We're going to talk a little bit about, the cohort building and the team building that we did and this transformational journey that they go on from, both a personal and a career perspective. So we're going to jump right into the conversation. So Zeyana, I'm going to ask you the first question, and then Chuy, I'm going to have you respond afterwards. If you can, tell us what's the story behind your decision to embark on an MBA journey.
Yeah, for sure. So I came from a medical science background. And so the business world was all so new to me, and it was actually a huge knowledge gap. So I really did need to come and I did need to learn about the business world. I'm really glad I did because it's completely 360'd my career aspirations now. But yeah, for me, embarking on the MBA was definitely to learn and to grow my skills and grow my, I guess, abilities in the business world.
Okay. Well, for me, and first of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's such an honor. Um, I would say my story is about love and happenstance. Like, mm, I come from an engineering background, and to be honest, I wanted to study business when I was in high school, but I wasn't sure. So I thought about studying an MBA afterwards. I started to work as sales engineer, and to be honest, I just forgot about that dream because life was so good. It was a good job. I enjoyed it, and I really didn't think about doing the MBA anymore. But in the meantime, I was in a long distance relationship with my partner who was already studying in Canada. And I frequently thought about uh, returning to my dream of studying an MBA. And I said, you know what? Let's do it. I will embark on this journey. University of Alberta is like the best option to do that. And let's do it.
And what interesting diversity both of you represent. So we already talked about, we've got an international student and a domestic student, but we've got a medical sciences student and an engineer with engineering sales. And so what two different places to be coming to a shared experience of the MBA. And so this kind of pivot, starting something brand new, is what we want to chat about today, specifically with orientation. Orientation to the MBA program is a big deal. It's a week long, sometimes a little bit more than a week, depending on if you're an international student or not. And we go through a lot of stuff, and everybody's coming from a different place, and that's such a unique experience. So I'm curious to hear, put yourself in your shoes this time last year. You are prepping for orientation. You are a week out, 2 weeks out, right? You haven't got here yet. Where are you? Specifically geographically, where are you located a few weeks before orientation? And what's going through your mind as you're a few weeks out?
I guess I'll go first. Geographically, I am a domestic student. So we were out of town for a bit, but Edmonton is my home base. So I'm lucky in that aspect that I didn't have to move my whole life. Um, but my headspace, I was definitely very, very terrified. It was a new faculty. It was going back to school. I knew coming into it, I'd be one of the youngest students as well. Um, and I lacked the work experience that a lot of my classmates did have, specifically my international like friends now. And so I was very, very scared. And I was trying to come up with different ways in my head how to portray my lack of experience. But yeah.
In my case, a few weeks before the orientation week, I was quitting my job, which was tough because, and it was not only about the job, it was about saying goodbye to people, to my family, to my friends, to my coworkers. And then I was in Edmonton, which meant it was a new country, new culture, new language, new everything. Like the transport system, everything was new for me. Mentally, I would say I was still like in the hype. Like, of course, I was stressed, but I was much more optimistic than nervous, so to say.
I'm curious, as you were experiencing kind of excitement, nerves, being terrified, I appreciate the pure honesty on I wasn't just nervous, I was terrified.
Yeah.
In that mindset, did you have some inklings that you might be the only one feeling that you might be somehow either more terrified than other people, that this was kind of a you feeling and not a shared experience? Zeyana, let's go with you first.
Yeah, I definitely thought that um, it was just a me thing, uh, but I quickly came to see that it definitely wasn't.
Ah, interesting. Chuy, what about you?
I would say it's completely natural to feel that way because that's your unconscious telling you that, hey, this is all very new, that we're in a crisis, in chaos. But at the end, I think it's very important for your mind to remind yourself that everyone is in the same chair as you, everyone is feeling the same way, and it really helps you to just take 5 seconds to take a long breath and remember to yourself that you're in the same position as everyone, and just approach someone else and say, hi, how are you? I'm from Edmonton, Mexico, anywhere.
Tiffany, I'm going to throw that question to you. I'm going to, where were you? What was your headspace? This was Tiffany's first orientation.
Mhm.
So I'd love to hear from Tiffany. What about you?
Yeah, let's point out this myth that we're busting at the moment that you are the only person nervous, because not only have we confirmed that students, every single one of them is nervous. I was nervous. It was my first orientation as a facilitator. I hadn't been through this. Not only that, I'm partnered with Mr. Experienced over here, Paul Taylor, who's done this a bazillion times. And so, total pro, cool as a cucumber, completely experienced. And so, I also thought it was a me thing that I was the only one nervous, perhaps between Paul and I. And that's another myth to be busted. Because, Paul, how do you approach orientation that you've done every year? How do you feel?
So this year coming up is my 12th orientation. So done this a lot. And you'd think, oh, easy peasy, no problem. This person could just jump right in and communicate effectively and not be nervous and just do it. Every year I'm nervous. There's big expectations. This is the first part of an MBA experience for students. So you want them to be just flying high and really loving what they're doing here. And then that launches them into the semester. So I am also a very nervous person. I have a lot of strategies to hide the nervousness and the anxiety, but once we get into it, it is total bliss and excitement and so much fun.
Yeah, so there we go. Myth number one busted. If you're watching this and you are approaching either our orientation or perhaps another one, every single person is nervous. This is a new experience. I appreciate your word of chaos, right, Chewy? That is a shared experience. And so let's still keep this, you haven't hit day one yet. And Paul just talked about strategies. So let's reverse this. Chewy, what was one strategy that you were using from a mindset perspective that was prepping you for day one, walking in the door and meeting everyone?
Well, I would say besides just like breathing, it's important if you have the opportunity, give yourself some spare time to go to university, to the classroom, get to know the surroundings. And I would say that helps a lot, especially if you're an international student. There are many things or many assumptions that you had in your original country, which are not the same in Canada, right? So that's very important.
What about you, Zayana?
Uh, I come from Edmonton and I went to University of Alberta, so I was lucky to be able to know the campus. Uh, but I think the biggest tip I have for orientation and before starting orientation and everything like that is just go in with a very open mind. Let everything come to you and just realize that like it will be scary and it will be like very eye-opening, I think. But let it happen.
If I can just add something onto that, you guys, it's the thing that Tiffany and I always take into consideration is health, well-being, enjoyment for the people coming in, right? And so just know that there are people there that are going to support you through this, right? So yes, you may be nervous, yes, but there's going to be activities for you to get to know people right away. There's going to be smiling faces. So, and I think that goes for any event that you go to. There's typically somebody there that's like, very helpful, very welcoming, and Tiffany and I, are like your greeters at the front of the Walmart store to be like, come on in, we're going to have lots of fun here. So,
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I'm curious on first impressions. So the first moment you are walking in the room and meeting all of your fellow cohorts, which I need to point out was different times for both of you. So we have international students actually start a little bit earlier because there is a whole bunch more change layered on top of already a big pile of change for starting the MBA. So that was different moments for both of you. But what was your very first impression? Chuy, let's start with you.
Well, I remember coming in a room, kind of a silence room. Like anyone who was talking was doing that quietly, because I arrived a little bit in the early time slot, and yeah, it was natural as we discussed before to feel a little bit awkward, and just as soon as you just started talking, like I started talking to someone else, then suddenly everyone was talking and it would just flew everything flowed naturally. Yeah.
All right. So I walked into a room of domestic students. I remember walking in and shaking hands with a few of my really good friends now, but at the time they were strangers. And it just seemed that everyone was so, I guess, excited to meet one another, and that was really nice. It definitely calmed my nerves a lot. And I can't remember who exactly it was, but someone said, I'm so scared for this week to start. And I went, oh, thank God, me too. So,
it's nice to have that shared experience, hey? And I think that as soon as somebody says that, and Tiffany and I, we try to normalize these feelings that of nervousness, excitement, anxiety, and for me, I am a big, tall, loud individual, and it's like, oh, that person can't be nervous about something, but I am, and I think that once you hear that, you start to kind of say, oh yeah, I feel that as well. I'd love to know from you guys, like, what are your favorite memories from orientation? What maybe stuck with you the most as you went kind of through that first year? Zayana, how about we start with you?
yeah, for sure. My favorite memories from orientation were definitely there was like the different workshops. I really liked like getting a little bit of what we're going to learn throughout the years, figuring out from the beginning what I really liked. Um, and so that was really cool. I liked team building and interacting and just getting to know one another. Um, because you're stuck with these people almost all day, every day for 2 years. And so having that week to get to know each other was really important for when classes started the following week.
Yeah, in my case, I also like the people factor, and I would highlight an activity in which we have had to draw um, something representative from our lives, and then we need to share that with another person. And I think that was uh, something that really helped me connect with that person, in the sense that I was explaining to a total stranger from another continent, who happened to be in the same situation as I was, like everything about my past, about my beliefs, about my future, and I think that was just in a certain way beautiful, right?
Mm. We often get students that talk about that activity. And for anybody watching, you'll get to experience it this time. It is a staple in our orientation. And so I don't want to give it away, but it is a very meaningful experience that a lot of students, most of the students enjoy a lot. We've talked about this connection piece, and both of you just talked about it, favorite memories being getting to know each other. But we've also talked about that sometimes being a little bit awkward, and that people have different comfort levels in how fast you get to know people, right? We talk about differences between extroversion or introversion, if you want to use those words. I'm curious about your strategies throughout the week. So as you're going through, you came in with a strategy, but we have to flex that sometimes as we're going through a new experience, especially as sometimes meeting people can be draining. So how did you kind of use different strategies throughout the week personally? Let's start with Chuy.
Yeah, I would say one of the key factors that you need to take into account is managing your own energy, right? So if you're aware of yourself and you feel that you are draining the first day, have a good sleep, take a good breakfast, so that you can continue in the same energy level during the whole week. But if you have lots of energy, on the other hand, don't miss the opportunity to hang out with students or with your colleagues, I don't know, on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, anytime.
Um, I would say something very, very similar. I think each and every person in this program is so unique and so different, uh, that just take the time to get to know them as well. But as Chuy said, get to know yourself and see what your limits are and how much you can push yourself. Because I think it is very important to push yourself, especially in brand new situations. Uh, but yeah, know your limits, but definitely get to know people on a very deep level because everyone is so cool and so unique and has such cool stories that you want to get to know them.
Paul, you've watched a lot of students try to manage their energy during this week, and that's a fantastic way to put it, Chuy. Talk a little bit about the diversity that you've seen, because I want to point out a bit of perception when you talk about getting to know each other. And Chuy, you made a really good point. If you need to take some time out or a breather or manage your own energy, we also need to recognize that people are doing that. And as we're, first impressions of getting to know people, realize that there are different strategies for energy management. So Paul, what have you seen between the diversity of how students do this?
That's actually a complex question. And I was thinking as you were talking, I'm like, how do I answer this really quickly? To give you an idea, there's 60 people in a room that come from all different walks of life in all different places from around the world. And they're all going to manage these things in different ways. A lot of them think, oh, I need to be the one to put my hand up and answer questions and dive into things. But sometimes it's okay to just observe. And sometimes it's okay to take that moment to just see what's happening and watch others as you kind of fluctuate through that. Zeyana made a really good point. It's almost like being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that is not going to go away in your MBA program, whether it's in a stats class or in a leadership class or anything like that. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. With that being said, we do a little activity when we first start, and there's like an elastic band, and we talk about stretch, right? And that stretch needs to be there. If there's no stretch, we're not learning, we're not growing. But we don't want to stretch too much where that elastic is breaking. And so what I would say would be, enjoy the activities. They're there for a reason. Tiffany and I are very thoughtful around the time that it takes and all of those kinds of things. But I think from my perception is the ones that really dive in, the ones that get comfortable with being uncomfortable, they're the ones who take the most away from orientation.
I appreciate that. And understanding that there is this different lens. So if you see someone who is observing, recognize that that might be a strategy for energy management. And it may not be that they are disengaged, that everybody's going to show up a little bit differently in this week. So talking about different, would either of you do anything differently? You've now had an entire year. You have been through orientation. You know a lot more about the MBA program than you did at this point last year. So orientation specifically, Zeyana, if you could go back, would you do anything differently?
Um, I would actually have a journal where I would reflect on what I learned throughout the day. Um, I think we forget that orientation is actually part of a course, and you learn a lot during that first week. And I think between all the nerves and like excitement of meeting people, you almost forget what you learned. Not in a bad way, but I would love to write it down, reflect, remember, because it is important, what you guys are throwing at us. And so that's definitely one thing I would do different.
I would just say one word: storytelling. Like that's something we have learned during the last year. First, you need to know yourself, as we discussed earlier, and then how to deliver that message. Because the one of the first two or three questions in any conversation in the orientation week is who you are, where are you from, and if you have a really cool story or way to deliver that message, which is your life, that helps a lot.
And I'm curious, and I'm going to ask this of the four of us. What did we find, each of us, to be the biggest challenge that week? Again, we're all different, so we're going to all be challenged by different things. Let's reverse this. Let's start with Chuy, and then we'll do Zeyana. I'll go Paul, and I will end.
Well, to be honest, as an international student, I would say the biggest challenge, you already did it. Because I would say what keeps you more nervous, the most stressful moment, you did it in the past few months with approving the GMAT, having a visa in the case that you needed it, coming to Canada, quitting your job or your business or whatever. Those are both bold decisions. And to be honest, I would say that's something that kind of resonates through your whole journey in your MBA. Because I don't know, to be honest, like the doubts of hey, did I do the right decision? Am I going in the right path? They never go out. You just need to accept the decisions that were in the past and live the present. I would say that's the challenge.
I guess I go next. Um, for me, the biggest challenge definitely was staying, um, I guess, aware and present the whole week. By the time it got to Friday, it was very hard to keep talking about myself. But I think that was really cool to make sure I keep doing it because in the job world, you definitely will have to. So that was, I guess, the most challenging part of the week for me. Chewy definitely had a lot harder transition than I did. And that's so cool of you, Chewy. Uh, but yeah, for me, that was the most challenging part.
If we think about specifically 2023 orientation where you guys started, the biggest challenge is there's a new facilitator. They've never been through this. They need the kind of like guidance support. I still need to be on for students. I still need to check in. I still need to make sure that students are experiencing things in a good way. And so I think the challenge for me of specifically 2023 was just making sure the ducks were in the row, right? And making sure those were there. I think in orientation as a whole, I live in this world of extroversion and introversion. I'm like right in the middle. And so I need to make sure that like I manage my energy and manage my rest time and the recharging of the battery.
Yeah, and my challenge last year, well, I mean, it was my first year, is kind of the opposite of Paul's of being new, being that person who doesn't actually quite know how this is going to go and is responsible for leading it, right? And so a new experience, but leading a new experience is definitely a challenge. Checking in with myself every day, both on my own. So when you're doing something new and you're leading it, there are lovely little imposter monsters that will appear. And if we look all confident up there, like we know what we've got going on, newsflash, both Paul and I aren't always confident, and I wasn't always last year. Chuy and Zeyana may not have realized that, but that definitely was at play for me. And so last year it was new. this year it was, so I'm with you, Zayana, how do I go back, reflect on what I learned last year, and now do things perhaps a little bit differently? Can I use my own self-reflection to now be a better version of myself on my second round? Yeah.
So now you guys are the experts. Now Zayana and Chuy have been there. They've done this. They've done orientation. What advice would you have for students going into an orientation for this year? Zayana, how about we start with you?
Sure. I think the biggest advice, and I've already said this, is kind of just let it happen. Take in everything as it comes. Uh, talk to everyone. Engage in everything in the best that you can. Um, no one's judging you. Uh, honestly, you'll get out of the experience what you put into it. So put everything you can into it because it really is something that I've personally learned from, I've personally used in my life ever since. So yeah, just take it all in.
Awesome. Chuy, how about you?
I totally agree with Sienna. Yeah, I might just add a little bit on yeah, give yourself the chance to feel awkward, to feel fear, and to be open-minded with other people. Just remember that the MBA at the end of the day is just a playground, right? Even life is a playground. Like it's just about learning, having the courage to try new things, and yeah, if you're pursuing a career in business, the awkward situations are going to increase. They are not going to decrease. So you are in the orientation week, get used to it. As Tiffany and Paul always say, get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, right?
Boy, I feel like you guys could go out and kind of market orientation for us. I truly couldn't have said that better myself. And it, in fact, is more powerful, I think, coming from those who have experienced it and lived it in your seats. All right, I think we're ready for a lightning round. Are you both ready?
Let's go for
Yeah.
it.
They're like, yeah, sure. We're still comfortable with being uncomfortable. All right. Zeyana, let's start with you. What part of your career story has given you the biggest boost?
My research and publishing my research.
Chuy?
Getting out of my comfort zone, like when recognizing when was the time for having the first job, when was the time for quitting the first job and getting a second job, when was the time for getting going for an MBA.
Awesome. Let's reverse it. Chuy, what's one thing you wish you had learned sooner?
Storytelling, like, and also know yourself, accept yourself, and improve yourself.
Love it. Zeyana?
Oh my gosh. I wish I had learned, I'd say a lot of improv, a lot of communicating, a lot of picking things up very quickly. Um, yeah.
Amazing. All right, and Zayana, let's end the last one with you. Service is so important to Paul and I, so we're always super curious to hear how service is going to show up for you in the coming week.
I'm a huge volunteer in my community. So this week, I'm actually getting to spend Sunday in the NICU, cuddling little premature babies.
Chuy?
Um, well, I have the honor to serve in the MBA association, so I will be present with in many of the new students' activities. I will serve, helping them feel more comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Amazing. Brilliant ways to serve. Paul, do you have a fun Paul's question to end us off with?
So season 2, episode 1, it happens to be that both Zayana and Chuy are coachees to Paul. And so I would be silly not to ask, what has been your favorite moment of being a coachee when working with me? Zayana, how about you go first?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely remember sessions with you, Paul, where I just sat there and I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I'm experienced enough. And you kind of let me say it, but then you kind of spun it and went, no, you know what? You have the experience. You just need to pull it and you just need to find it and you just need to use it. Uh, and I take that very honestly so much in my life when I doubt it. Um, and yeah, I really appreciate that.
Same with me. I also love that part of our coaching sessions with you, Paul. I would just add the humor sense. You know how to take complex situations, difficult situations, awkward situations, and somehow put them or frame them in a way that are funny or just a little bit that sound more relaxing.
Thanks, guys. And it wasn't meant to be like a subtle brag or a humble brag. Tell me why I'm great. But I think that it's important to realize like coaching happens with two people, right? And sometimes it happens with more, but like everybody's experience is different. And so I think it's important to know that there can be multiple different experiences while working with a career coach, which all these MBA students will get to do the next little bit.
Chuy Zeyana, we are so grateful that you are willing to chat with us on season 2, episode 1, video podcast, kind of a new world for us. So thank you for continuing to lean into being comfortable with being uncomfortable. But not only that, for being such valuable and purposeful and intentional guideposts for our new students. You offered such fantastic experience from very different lenses. But while you had different experiences, you also had shared experiences, which is really interesting. And so I'm looking forward to meeting the new cohort. I know that you all will be involved in helping onboard them as well. And I hope that this was helpful to them as they get going. Some of them, we meet them Friday morning. So thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you very much, Paul and Tiffany.
Thank you for having us.
So things look a little different this season, and we're going to do key takeaways a little bit differently. We are going to give them to you off the cuff at the end and give us our own perspective. And so I'm going to hop in with the first key takeaway. I really appreciated when Chuy mentioned that no one is judging you. And so whether that is this orientation, if you're gearing up to come meet with us next week, know that none of your fellow cohorts are here to judge you, because we assume that you are also not judging them. But I'd like to tack on a little bit at the end and say, if no one's judging you, then be careful. Don't judge yourself in all of this. Give yourself a good lot of grace. So I really appreciated that. And that's one of my key takeaways. Paul, how about you?
That was wonderfully put. So thank you so much for that. And I think for me, there's two little mini takeaways. The first one, Zeyana said she wished she would have brought a journal to orientation. I encourage you to do that. And if you don't bring a journal, at least the reflection of what you've been going through and implanting that in our brain somewhere, I think is really important. And I loved when Chuy made the comment of life is a playground. You might as well just play. Have fun, play, and enjoy yourself.
So we've got a week of playing coming up for us. Orientation kicks off for us in a few days. We're looking forward to seeing a new cohort. And our next episode will be with someone brand new to the MBA program. And we will learn what they experienced out of this orientation. So catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Career Boosters podcast. We hope you had a blast. Yeah, we know that's corny. Catch you next time, and remember to subscribe wherever you enjoy podcasts.